So I personally always wonder about approaching the portrayal of real life characters, and do you see that as a responsibility or a burden, or do you just jettison that sort of thing?
Wow, that's a good, complicated question to lead off here. I mean, I'll start by saying that I think, like a lot of you in this room, I discovered the Beats in college. I can remember showing up at the campus bookstore and just tracking down the poetry collection and finding Allen Ginsberg's poetry and just stopping short and reading it there in the aisles like it was some secret. So when you ask the question about our sort of sense of responsibility about these figures, I mean, as any of you know as screenwriters, you can't make it perfectly accurate. It's not history. You've got to tell a story. And I think what we decided to do was to tell the story that was true to the 18 and 19-year-old version of themselves. We wanted to make the movie that we would want it to have had the poster on our wall, you know, a kind of the rock and roll version of this story, not the biopic, the stuffy biopic version that was the greatest hits. So, yeah, John, you want to feed on that?
Yeah, there's so much biographical material out there, and we threw ourselves in the research process early on, and there's the biographies, there's the oral histories, because so many fans of these guys and people who knew them, everybody wrote about their connections with them. All the facts were out there, but there came a time when I became so overwhelmed with all the research out there, and I realized that we started writing not to who they were in the movie, but we kept on writing to the legends they would later become. And this wasn't about Allen Ginsberg with beads around his neck and a huge long beard. This was about an insecure but passionate 17-year-old from Paterson, New Jersey, who just got into his dream school, whose mother was emotionally ill, who he had to take care of, and the fact that he wanted to be a writer, but his father was a poet, and he didn't want to tell his father that he wanted to follow in his footsteps. Like, that was a character we could write. So we just put a moratorium on research after 1945, the year after which this movie takes place, and then I passed that along, too, when I worked with the actors. You know, I remember Jack Houston coming to me and going, "Oh my God, I'm playing Jack Kerouac." And I'm like, "No, you're not. You're playing Jack. He's got a football scholarship. He's at Columbia University. He doesn't fit in with the rest of the jocks. He has a first novel that he wrote. He's afraid that it's trite, and he wants to join the Merchant Marines and have real experience with his life." And I think by limiting that, it kind of freed us in a way to not tackle gods, but to see them as human beings.
Well, I imagine for your actors as well, that must have been a tremendous boon to not have to play an icon, but just to play a person.
Yeah, because you didn't want the winky wink version where Jack Kerouac ends the movie by saying, "See, I'm going on the road." You know?
Did you almost write that version?
We said it out loud many times. Yeah. I don't know if we ever put it to paper.
But back to your point of what Ginsberg was, that opening of his is, how many different openings did you go through? Because that very much encapsulated exactly what you were talking about.
So the opening actually is one of the things that did not change. Any of you who are writers in this room, you know that feeling. You've like locked at least one good page, and you just keep going back to it. Just keep looking at it, trying to remind yourself why the hell you're sitting in the chair, why you're continuing to work on this thing. We had the idea of telling the kind of noir style. You open at the climax, the moment of the greatest tension, and then you scroll backwards, Sunset Boulevard style. John's great idea was that we would sort of this film would move from noir, which was of the period, into something more. Well, I'll let you tell it, but something more new wave.
You know, we started writing this 10 years ago. This movie took 10 years to make. And there actually was one draft where we changed it. Because it was like every 2 years we would check in with each other when this movie almost happened and trying to find fresh new energy to it, and you want to tinker around and play with it. And then inevitably the movie would fall apart. But ultimately, yeah, we stuck with our gut instinct, which is when we were doing research for this movie, it takes place in 1944. Double Indemnity was one of the nominees for Best Picture. It was Year of Laura, Year of Gilda. It was a high point of American film noir. And we thought, why not just include that in the fabric of the screenplay? And why not include that in the fabric of the cinematic style of the film? And that was a big kind of telling a coming-of-age tale as a noir film was exciting to write.
It's incredible stamina, 10 years to keep with the story and to revive it and revive it and revive it. What was the core of it that just kept you excited?
For me, I always say there has to be something that keeps me up at night and pisses me off. And the fact that in 1944 you could literally get away with murder by portraying your victim as a homosexual predator. I mean, it still upsets me just saying that out loud right now. And by no means did we want to make this a political film, but the fact that that was the pivot on how Lucian literally got away with murder It really upsets me. And when we would get the call that the financier dropped out and the script just was put on a pile with a bunch more phone calls to make, that was usually the place that I went to. Was it the same for you?
Well, I think, as any of you know, when you're writing about these great artists you admire, you feel like you're sitting down in church every day, kind of. And I felt many times that we were asking the art gods for forgiveness for putting the words in the mouths of these amazing artists who made me want to be a writer. But the truth is, their work was actually what got me back in the chair.
When the rubber hit the road and you saw you were going to have budget X as opposed to budget X times 10, perhaps, or times 2, how did that affect the script, if at all?
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the big... People ask us how much did the script change. That's the big change, was actually when the production budget came through. I mean, there are lots of ways that I think... John had written other screenplays. He worked for Miramax a good bit. And you had this sense that, like, we should just write the film we want to make, just go for it. Which meant that there were period football games. There was, like, period IRT traveling. There were lots of, outdoor period details. There was no way in hell we were going to be able to pull that off.
Well, yeah, the Kerouac is a good example. We went from introducing Kerouac as a character on a football field, getting into a fight with the coach by throwing a football all the way across the field and hitting the thermos of the coach, spilling coffee on him. A scene involving 200 extras.
Right.
And that became the football toss to Allen Ginsberg in his living room, the established location that we already had.
Yeah.
Because we went from 12 to 8 to 6 to 5 to 4 to under 4, and it was a constant need to trim. And the great thing about, Austin and I having this close relationship was Austin was on set, and inevitably we didn't even get... Every scene in this movie was shot in under 2 hours or less, basically. It was a 24-day shoot, and that meant dropping scenes left and right, too, every day. And, one valuable experience was having Austin on set with me. We were able to rewrite on the fly a lot, which you just kind of need to do when you have a machine that's just moving so fast.
What did your preset collaboration look like? Were you guys even geographically in the same space when you were writing, or no?
From time to time, not much.
Well, originally, Austin came to me with the idea to do this about 10 years ago. I had just finished film school, and at that time, Austin was getting some renown as a short story writer, and you were about to enter Iowa to study playwriting?
Yeah, I've been doing magazine journalism for a while, working here in the city for the Times Magazine.
And Austin came to me with the idea for a great short story, because we're friends, we collaborate with each other. And that was, he wanted to write a short story about this true story of murder, which I had never heard about, that brought the beats together at a young age and caused them to stop just being college students thinking about doing something great with their lives and to go on and start this revolution. And I, of course, start seeing the movie version go on the back of my head. And I turned to him and pulled my best Jedi mind trick and said, I think that, as a short story, just the visual components that you need to tell this story wouldn't be served, and we should do this as a film and collaborate with each other. And he listened to me, thankfully. Then Austin went on to grad school, and we both, were teaching in various cities to pay the bills, and it was kind of like the band Postal Service. We spent the first draft together on my kitchen table, and God bless Austin from having a journalism background. He's great at spitting out the first draft, whereas I have the fear of the empty page. And then Austin would email me the draft, and then I would revise and play with it, and then send back, and we'd constantly send back and forth.
Are you guys ritualistic writers? Were there certain songs or artworks that were kind of playing around you as you were writing this? Is it something that gets you in a head?
Well, we were lucky. We wrote the script from about 2004, 2007, I would say, the first draft in the drafting process. And then the Ginsberg journals got published, the Book of Martyrdom and Artifice. And that was kind of amazing to read, because Ginsberg's novella is in that collection, the novella you see him write on screen. And so for me, personally, just reading his journals from this period of his life are very revealing. And they were full of wonderful information about Lucian's character and really his hypothesis about what happened over the night in question that we describe in the film. Spookily enough, really close to what we had written in the script before reading his journals. So the actual writing of the beats really inspired me. And I think John's a very musical-based writer and thinker, and we really created a ton of playlists and shared them back and forth, and that inspired us.
And music, he's right. Actually, a lot of the songs, the contemporary songs in the movie, were part of my playlists. I used my stepfather is a writer, and he taught me the trick to, you take one song that you feel connects you emotionally to the scene and put it on repeat, because then it just becomes noise, but then also keeps your emotional frequency going at where you want the scene to be. And so a lot of the songs in the movie were actually the songs I put on repeat while writing. And it wasn't the intention, I'll just briefly, to actually put contemporary music in. That was an evolvement that just happened. And Austin saying the movie that we wanted to have on our poster wall in college, I had period music underscoring it. I had this whole plan. I was going to do this whole birth of bebop soundtrack, because that's what was going on at this time. And that's what these guys were inspired by. Swing was top 40, and bebop was being born in the bars of Harlem. It didn't match the picture. And my music supervisor told me, John, don't take your academic treatise and put it to the left for a second. Let your child speak to you, because your film does change. And I started using songs that Austin had sent me during writing underneath Sigur Rós, stuff that felt kind of contemporary but timeless and emotional. And it really just brought the adolescent, pure, open, emotional spirit to life of the film, I've thought.
You've got iconic characters that we have some visual image of because we have film of them, right? And then you have a couple of actors who have played iconic roles. You've got Daniel Radcliffe, obviously, from Harry Potter. You've got Michael Hall, Dexter. We have posters all over. How do you even think about trying to separate them from all the baggage that they might bring in?
Well, this movie it's about a lot of first times. Your first time leaving home, your first time going to a cool party and feeling awkward in the corner, your first time falling in love, and the first time getting your heart broken. And so, the reason a lot of people take chances on first-time filmmakers is they have more that they want to show the world. And so I got to know this. I was intimidated. Look at the cast that I got. It's a dream cast. But I just spent the time beforehand to really get to know all of my actors and to ask them simple questions like, what have your good experiences with directors been? What have your bad experiences been? How do you each like to work? And then I fought for rehearsal time. So we all had a time to get to know each other. And in the same way, like you see those army movies where they all went to boot camp together. We didn't have a boot camp, but they threw a kickoff party in the style of the Beats. Being the director, I was the first to leave, so I don't know what happened, but I heard it was fun. And then I borrowed a method from Coppola, and we rehearsed scenes that weren't in the script, because everyone's always afraid, will I ever capture that same energy? And it allowed them, with Jack Houston and with Elizabeth Olsen, we improv their first date. And that gave them a chance to explore each other and their character and their chemistry without having to worry about what we were going to film. And then some of the improvs were so good, Austin and I ended up then writing notes and taking them down and putting them into the movie. You have to leave all the iconic status behind.
Yeah.
And just, Dan was really cool. He's just such a hard worker and a great guy. While he was doing a Broadway musical, we met once a week to work on his accent initially. But then he said, you know what? I want to approach this like it's my first film too, which I thought was really poignant. And so I said to him, well, how have you trained? And he said, believe it or not, I've been working on my instinct all this time. I said, would you like a method? And so the two of us worked together. I had studied acting undergrad at Yale, was a horrible actor myself. We worked and created this method, which kind of liberated him from the way he had worked before. So, you know what I mean? We had to push all of that and my baggage as a first-time director, all that aside and just spend the time and really build a level of trust with everyone.
Yeah.
I met with the Allen Ginsberg estate after we finished the script. Again, I was intimidated by the fact that if I had to form relationships with the people who are responsible for upholding a certain legend and reputation, that I would somehow creatively hamper myself as to what I would say about them. And thankfully, the Allen Ginsberg estate loved the script and have come on board and came with us to Sundance and have been really supportive of the film. And I know that Ben Foster worked with the Burroughs estate when building his character. Our research process was really investigating ourselves, and I went to the Stanford University, to the Ginsberg archives, and we went to a lot of the actual locations. We actually broke into Jack Kerouac's apartment by buzzing all of the buzzers outside the building, and then knocking on the door to find that there were undergraduates living there who had no idea they were living in Jack Kerouac's apartment. Yeah. But getting to go to all the physical locations here in Manhattan just really helped us when writing, you know what I mean? Being able to visualize the spaces and the feel, and like we went to the place where the murder happened and tried to walk out how he could have possibly dragged the body from the place where he stabbed him to the actual water. You know what I mean? Like just being there in the actual spaces really was extremely helpful for me.
119th, I think. 119th on the way west side. So it's really changed, though, geographically. It's almost impossible to really get a sense of how it was because the road, I mean, the highway runs right next to the river now. And at that time, it was way inset. So there was a pretty big park. And
there's a Starbucks.
No, but we did know that he did have to drag him a lot further than just pushing a body, which then made us, to be honest, think about his character and his culpability. You know,
the level of malice. Yeah, I mean, just how much hate had gone into what happened.
It was all location shooting. This is an actual prison that is in the Bronx that there's one portion of it that they allow for filming. The scary thing is it's a working prison. And this was day one. And so I have like Don't Stop Believing on my headphones by Journey cranked up to volume 11 as I'm being escorted by armed guards past prisoners to like the one part of the prison where you can film. I mean, that was the inspiration, of course, was the metacasting and how exciting that would be and fun. But then the real excitement for David, and also for me, was to give him the chance to play a straight dramatic role, which he's never done before. And he was game. He loved the idea that he had played the son and could now play the father. You know, to us, it lended some visual authenticity to the role. But also, again, this was so many people trying new things for the first time. David was game to, you know, really emotionally invest himself and work in a new way. That didn't mean as soon as I said cut that he wasn't cracking the rest of us up nonstop. But while I was rolling, I told him he wasn't allowed to make any jokes.
We'd like to thank you all very, very much for coming, and thank these guys, for joining us.
Thank you so much
as well.
for coming tonight.
Thank you, man.